So today we're covering a topic that's really near and dear to us at Opus. We're constantly thinking about accessibility. Something that we get the benefit of as a training platform is we get to be in the hands of all of your team members. And so we're constantly seeing employee feedback come in. So when we thought about, how to turn employees into brand ambassadors, we were thinking of a lot of the partners that we work with, like Salt and Straw and Original Chop Shop, who are doing the work on the inside to make their training really rewarding and bring brand into every piece. So today we'll be covering how to use training to build a strong foundation for engaging and educating employees around your brand story and core values. Quickly, Haley, there will be captions included in the YouTube recording. We don't currently have live captions during the session, but if you can't hear me or any of our panelists clearly, please let me know. We'll also be discussing how you can empower employees with decision-making power. Something that we talk about all the time is getting 360 buy-in and getting that feedback from in the field so that people feel empowered to act on their own and you have strong managers who trust their team members. And then how to regularly evaluate employee performance. I think evaluation is a part of everything that we do in learning and development. So we'll get to that toward the end. Awesome. I'd love to introduce our wonderful panelists today. If you could just introduce yourself, your organization, maybe share your favorite menu item. Angela, I'll kick it off to you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Angela Gintz. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am from Salt and Straw, currently calling in from Portland, Oregon, so West Coast. Got to represent the West Coast a little bit. I'm the director of talent development here, and I've been with the company almost 3 years now. I would say I'm very biased. I like all the flavors. Honestly, you can't really go wrong with Salt and Straw ice cream, in my opinion. But my all-time favorite flavor is nobody asked, but I am telling you, my all-time favorite flavor is it's Arbequina olive oil. So it's an olive oil based ice cream that pairs really beautifully with most other flavors. It's kind of vanilla's like saucier, cooler cousin. Excited to be here.
Awesome, Keith. I'll kick it off to you.
My name is Keith Van Stan for Original Chop Shop as the manager of learning development. I've been with the brand for almost 11 years now when it originally started in Scottsdale, Arizona. I live here in Dallas, Texas now, where our home office is based out of what we like to call the mother shop. And my favorite menu item, that's tough because we have 57 menu items, but I'd have to say it'd be the Thai coconut chicken bowl or the acai bowl, one of the two.
That sounds so good. I'm realizing I haven't eaten lunch. That always happens.
I'm kind of right there with you, yeah.
And last but not least, Robert.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robert Rain. I'm Director of Human Resources for Ono Hawaiian Barbecue. We're a West Coast chain, 115 locations in California and Arizona. Been with the company 3 years. Had a great time here so far. Hope to be here another 20, 30 years. Favorite menu item, I'd have to say spam musubi. If you haven't had the opportunity to have spam musubi, it's a little rice cake with a slice of spam on top wrapped with seaweed. It is unbelievably delicious. It put a little bit of teriyaki sauce on it. It's fantastic.
Oh, yum. I was raised on spam musubi. That was like my favorite after school snack. Great. Thank you so much for your introductions. Before we get started, I think it's important to just set some context. So this discussion is centered around our employees, our team members. And it's really important, I think, to kind of set the stage with like, who are your employees? And Keith, Robert, Angela, I think that you're experts in this. You know who they are in the field. And I think for anyone in the audience, I think it's nice to find a concept that you kind of relate with, or somebody or an organization rather that you can kind of relate with or identify with. So Robert, I'll start with you. What is like the employee makeup like at Ono Hawaiian Barbecue?
We've got a pretty diverse culture. Primarily we have English and Spanish speaking employees. We do have some employees that speak Chinese. Age range, typically it's your typical, quick service restaurant. We have everything from students just coming out of high school to people that have been with the company over 20 years. So we've got a very diverse culture, and it's a fun culture, to be honest with you. It makes it very interesting.
Angela, I'll pop it over to you.
Yeah, so we're sitting at right now 43 locations across the U.S. And we make our ice cream centrally here in Oregon, and so most of our shop locations are all what would be kind of traditionally front of house folks. So that's sort of the makeup of the shop team across the board. I think what's interesting about our team member demographics are about 75% of team members are 25 years or younger. So we're definitely very well represented in the Gen Z population. And that number is only sort of increasing as our shop teams grow. I do want to note too that we work also with about 100 folks in a manufacturing setting in our central kitchen. So our team member base is primarily shop team members, though we have manufacturing as well as kind of our, central support mothership, headquarters folks. But just a lot of really bright-eyed, really passionate folks around, and very opinionated and just ready to kind of spread the good word of ice cream. So I love working with them. They're amazing.
That's insane. You said 75% or 25?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It might even be more now, but yeah.
And what about you, Keith?
Something similar. Original Chop Shop is also a fast casual restaurant, and we have 26 locations in Georgia, Texas, and Arizona. And we have a great amount of team members that are at the 25 age mark and younger, and most of that's hourly, but we even have some that are salary leaders too in that position. We do a lot of hiring from within and trying to promote from within, like every time we can. And we have a younger team, and we do have some older demographic too. That tends to end up in our kitchens. We have a pretty vast kitchen with many stations, and whenever we can get lifers in the kitchen, that's what I like to call them, those career cooks, we can, and they can, usually over that 30 into their 40s at some point.
Wow. So that's amazing. So I'm sure you see, you have a strong base of tenured managers.
Yeah, so our salary leadership tenure is 4 years, and our hourly team member tenure is just over 2 years. So it actually works out pretty well, especially being younger students that go away to college seasonally at times. But we've been able to capture some good tenure in the brand.
Awesome. That's a great segue into our first section. So we have separated out this live webinar into 5 sections. Zooming out really quickly, a good way to remember it and a framework that we're going to follow is just like these 5 E's. So engagement, education, empowerment, evaluation, encouragement. A little corny, but sometimes I think these frameworks are really helpful for memorizing. So to go into the first one, engagement, starting with a rich company culture as your foundation. How do you define your core values? Angela, I'm going to kick it off to you. I know that this is something that is really strong with Salt and Straw, and it's actually a topic that you kind of spoke with in a previous webinar with Opus. But how do you define your core values for such a young audience who, like you said, are already opinionated and are defining themselves and what's important to them in the process?
Yeah. So this is such a great concept and something I love to talk about. I think with our core values, I was telling a little bit of the brand story before we hopped on, but the idea of community is really at the center of our whole concept. And our CEO, Kim, likes to say, we're a place for people to make human connections, but we happen to serve really great ice cream. So that's already kind of rich in itself for bringing folks together, right? And so most people come to the brand as a customer or guest first. And so they're already sort of bought into the product, the story, the storytelling, the diversity of the menu, because we have 5 new flavors every month, in addition to a, 10 to 12 variety of classic flavors that are kind of evergreen on the menu. So folks kind of come in being like super fans a little bit already. Though we have found in some of our newer markets, folks don't know at all the concept before coming in or before hiring, to a frontline scooper position. But they begin to kind of hear and feel the fervor for this concept of community, the concepts of human kindness, innovation, creativity, those kinds of things, which are at the centerpiece kind of our core values. So I think what it comes down to is that people feel what we say we're about. And that's, I think, the most prominent thing about a company culture, or, day one of onboarding or day 5 of training, that they're feeling what you're walking the talk, right? It's not just talking the talk. And so I think that's where we really have that stronghold, because it's, we often hear from team members who this is their first job. They're like, wow, I never would have thought that I would have loved, working here as much as I do, or that I never felt like I belonged anywhere until I started working at Salt and Straw. And those are like incredible stories, right? I think the other piece working for us is, the concept itself is much bigger than just, a transaction, right? And so, especially with, I've found in my career prior to Salt and Straw was in the higher education space. So worked closely with college students for like 10, 15 years. And something that I think really appeals to that sort of 18 to 25 demographic is being part of something bigger than themselves. And they're able to utilize, the way that the brand does utilize ice cream as a platform to shed light on community partnerships, or, give a scoop to someone in need or something like that. So they're part of something that's bigger than themselves. And I think that really feeds their desire to be part of something bigger, part of something, a community, something social change sort of based. And so just continuing to breed that and to live our values every day.
I love that. I want to make a quick distinction. You mentioned this, and Keith, Robert, I'd love for you to weigh in, but you said that you have this strong community in Portland, and there's that brand presence and that sense of like, you just feel it when you walk in and you're already a fan of the brand. You just opened new stores in New York City, which is opposite coast, completely new market, heavily saturated with novelty niche ice cream brands. What was that like setting up shop in, a more foreign market, and like you're like, okay, we really need to take what we've like distilled in this market and replicate it in a completely new environment?
Yeah, I mean, that's it's a big question, something we really wrestled with as we plan to open in New York City. I would say, it really starts at all places, right? So like from the get-go of making sure our job ads, something as basic as a job ad, right? Like really gets to that spirit of community, storytelling, innovation, things like that. So that the folks coming in, like randomly scrolling on Indeed, you're like, oh, wait, this kind of stands out, right? And so making sure that every corner, every detail, every partner, every vendor that we worked with, from painters to, delivery drivers, right? Like that we're building those connections every time we turn around. And that in every step of the process, right, team members coming in, a lot of folks honestly didn't know the brand at all. A lot of guests came, flocked to our open shops and saying, oh, I used to live on the West Coast, or I used to live in San Francisco and whatever. So I'm familiar with the brand, but a lot of our team members didn't know Salt and Straw before, but they came to love it over the course of their training experience, because our day one of training, we have our training team, like what we call our sampling is a taste adventure. So you really like take a little spoonful of the ice cream, get the story, how it's made, who's the partner, what does it taste like, what does it pair well with. We have our trainers really give that sort of white glove service day one, so they know, oh, okay, this is a different place. You're not just coming in and, mopping floors or whatever, but you're coming in and you're being treated, with the ultimate, service, hospitality, and that will continue to ring true throughout your experience. So yeah, it's a little bit of that.
I love that, especially down to vendor selection.
Yeah, truly.
Robert, were you about to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking, for us, our values are we have an aloha culture. I think it starts as early as people applying. Uh, we primarily do 99% of our hiring through our locations. We'll post ads, but we drive everybody to the locations. If somebody applies, puts in a resume online, I'll have a member of the recruiting team reach out to them, talk to them, and get them set up for a face-to-face interview at a location. We don't want it to be a faceless experience. We really want people to feel like they're part of something. Like Angela mentioned, people want to feel like they're part of a greater cause. And we bring people in. We look for people that have that aloha spirit, that are friendly, that are outgoing. We can teach and train, on how to cook chicken or how to run a register. Um, we want people that have that innate sense of ohana, a sense of family. That somebody walks in a stranger and leaves a friend. That's
Mhm.
really what we're looking for, and that's the kind of engagement we like to have.
That's a really good note on hiring, and I know you're coming in from like the HR side, so I like the idea of doing a lot of the applications on site, on location, and making sure that people get that first like face-to-face impression rather than, an email chain or an automated
Mhm.
response. Um, in terms of, let's like think of the situation, Angela, we were talking about new store growth and new store openings, which are just like a party essentially that you're all throwing together. When you have existing stores and you want to keep that torch burning, Keith, Robert, I'll turn it over to you. What strategies are you using to kind of continually reinforce your company's brand and values?
Keith,
Well,
if you want to jump in.
yeah, I'll jump in there. I think at Original Chop Shop, one thing we really strive for to create brand ambassadors in the shop is making an emotional connection with our team. We do that heavily through our values. One of our core values is in our name. It's be original. And with our younger team, we want them to have some originality within, the store day to day. And we allow that within our uniform. We give them a little bit of originality with some guidelines, like denim
Mhm.
is our staple, and giving them some of that leeway and originality in their uniform and how they represent themselves to the guest. We don't always have a script that they have to follow, but some guidelines, and that way they can have fun with it. I think a good and small example, but had a big impact with the team was my Tempe ASU location way back in the day. I had all my girls in the front of house. They all coordinated and wore denim overalls one day, and they all had a different colored T-shirt underneath, and they had fun with it, and they were excited to come into work that day. And it was like a moment they'll never forget. And I think happy team members, equals happy guests. Like that culture that you were talking about, Angela, that kind of example flows over into the guest, and they can feel that. So with Original Chop Shop, our values are really important to us. And then, the development of people. We're in the people business. So I think some of the other subjects we're about to get into, some of the other E's, we'll drill into that more.
Great. And I'm keeping my eye on the clock so that we can get to every single one.
Yeah.
Moving on to education. So we talk a lot about continuous learning and development. The spirit of continuous learning is something that we think of at Opus. We define it as one of our values is actually 1% better every day. I think it's easy to feel overwhelmed with the pressures of your to-do list and your goals, but like really when you break it down to a day-to-day or like shift to shift, it's like we're striving for that 1% better. Um, excuse me. Keith, I'll pass it off to you to kind of kick us off, but like, how do you ensure training programs actually, I think in continuous learning, the thing that you're trying to work around is just change, and keeping people up to date and making sure that like your brand image and like the values that like people entered with on day one are maintained as you kind of like launch new menu items or implement new policies. So how do you ensure that these training programs stay up to date as like the business goes through change or you add new stores or I don't know, something as simple as like a uniform change?
Yeah, well, from a change standpoint, if anything needs to be changed, we can change that within the materials. We change that within Opus, and we'll send out a quick course that maybe the team can complete. But from a continual learning development standpoint, like coming back to who we were, what I was saying before, we are, in the people development business. So we really focus in on allowing our team to see a career path of where they can develop and giving them, through their skills, their experience, attributes, and time. And we want to develop them through, leadership skills. I think our team lead is a great example of when someone comes into training, we're constantly developing them around leadership skills, whether it's communication, coaching, development, time management. We have a lot of young individuals that are coming into these team lead roles. And we find that when we develop them around skills, these are things that they can take with them, even outside of Chop Shop when they leave the brand one day. And that's one of those things that creates that emotional connection that tends to keep them around for a while. When it comes to just changes in the brand, we had a campaign recently where we had a bunch of new food. We had a new protein bowl, a new salad. We got rid of some grains. We put in some new grains. It was a whole lot of change, right? And that comes with a lot of work. There's a lot of setup for the team from a material standpoint, how we deliver that communication, through Opus and through, we develop like a rollout packet. And we have to gather the regionals from all those shops, from their areas and train them on the product. And then, we'll send them to their region to deliver it to the team and, give them a little bit of autonomy on how to deliver that. But I think I'm getting into another bullet once again.
No, it's okay. I liked what you said. I mean, thinking about your experience with Chop Shop going back like 11 years,
Mhm.
going from employee number, remind me again, use your,
What was the question?
what you were employee number, I'm trying to recall. I want to say like in the first like 10 to 15.
I'm sorry, I'm not following.
You were one of the first few employees with Chop Shop, correct?
Yeah. I started with the first location in
Yeah.
2013.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So seeing all this growth over the course of like 10, 11 years, when
Mhm.
you think about ongoing training, the playbook like inside and out through almost every single role. Can you describe a specific training program that has been particularly effective or something that you've been able to kind of like use as your foundation and build upon?
Yeah. So like I said before, we have what are called seats, and seats are what a team member is in. It's their seat at the table, and it's described by their skills, experience, their attributes, and the time that they've had in that particular seat. That can start when someone's hired in as a hospitality team member in the front of house, and then they can move up to another seat level of a station expert. They can move up to an expo. They can move up to a shop trainer. They can move up to a team lead, and they can even make their way to AGM and GM. And we make sure that we really provide them with that visual of how long it can actually take to get in there and like what you have to do to get there. And within that, there's a whole lot of development, and I think that team lead uh, path is one that we really focus in on. Let's say we have a 17-year-old who's a team lead, like that's really common that wants to develop into that. They haven't had a whole lot of life experience and maybe their communication isn't very good. That's one of the first skills that we focus on with them. And, they'll make it through a whole set of skills and then continually learning. We'll actually go back through them. So once they complete their Opus module of their first round of skills, we'll come back to communication and we'll hit it a little deeper with active listening is a good example. Like, what does that mean? How do you use it? And we really focus that in on, our team lead development. And then that even grows into, salary leadership.
We have a question for you in the chat from Haley. How does the annual pumpkin scavenger hunt go from an execution and ROI standpoint? I can show that.
That's great. Great question. Yeah. We do a pumpkin hunt every year, which is ran by our marketing team. So there's not a lot, being honest, which is one of our core values, be honest. Not a lot from my side on that, but how it's executed is we'll send out a communication email to all the shops, to all the GMs. And our marketing team in the home office in Plano, they buy these little pumpkins, they paint the numbers on them, and they'll actually mail them out to all the shops. Right now, not too heavy lifting, with the 3 markets that we have. And, we give the GMs specific direction to hide the pumpkins and don't make it too difficult. Don't bury it in the ground. Don't, throw it in a bush somewhere, but they'll hide these pumpkins out in the area. And then the marketing team will provide clues to our guests that follow us on social media of where these pumpkins are. The guest finds the pumpkin, they bring it back into the shop, and then, we provide them with, free food and some gift cards or whatever it might be, the choice that year. So a lot of it's coordinated from our marketing team in the home office.
Wow, I love
Great
that.
question.
Great question, Haley. I have a feeling you're on the inside with that one.
Yeah, because you're from North Carolina, and I was like, I don't know how you know that.
Awesome. Angela, something that you mentioned is training monthly LTOs that focus on brand partner storytelling and kind of keeping. You guys have seasonal. I think you have a new flavor every time I've ever stepped into a store.
Yes.
So you have a pretty easy channel for like keeping that muscle going of ongoing training.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like a standard format that is like that is like hard coded so that I feel like if I were working at Salt and Straw for maybe a few months, I would be able to predict exactly how every monthly LTO rollout would go to the point where I'd be like looking forward to it.
Yeah, great question. And yeah, it's exactly what you're describing as muscle, right? I think with a lot of like training and learning, it's not just like getting privy to the information, but practicing it, right? Like there's that difference between memory, like download and recall, right? Where you're kind of spitting information out. Sorry, that was a tangent. Yeah, so I would say every month we come out with 5 new flavors. And for folks that know the brand, some of the flavors repeat year over year and some don't. So sometimes it's like a one-time, this is your one shot in life, to get ice cream with turkey in it, which is not the only time. So that's on our menu currently. But what I would say is that we kind of, when we roll out a new menu, there's a few things that we equip team members with, and it's kind of broken into different categories, right? So we'll have sort of the cheat sheet, right? The flavor notes, kind of like the headlines of it. But then we'll equip each team member with like a story about the partner, a story about how it was made, a story about maybe like physically how it was made, a story about what the inspiration was, and then some other maybe fun facts about it, like this is the 10th menu item we've ever created or things like that. And so essentially every time we roll out a new menu, we equip team members with stories that we want them to just kind of latch onto the one that they have the most connection to. So speaking on that authenticity piece is that if they know, oh, wow, this one, this flavor was made by Grandma Malik's cookie recipe. And, oh, I have such fond memories of hanging out with my grandma when I was a kid and we would eat cookies together. Like that story comes out much more authentic and much more vibrant, to the guest interaction. So it's sort of like, here's a whole bunch of information around different aspects, but all of them are seeking to kind of like give you something to connect with somebody else about, right? And so that's sort of, I don't want to say a formula per se, but kind of, and really our secret sauce is like that storytelling is to try and get folks to taste it, right? Because the taste is where you're like, oh, I never would have thought I would have liked, there's an example this month. Somebody I met in Portland, he's one of our community partners. He was like, I only like vanilla. Like that's my hard and fast, only vanilla. But there's a flavor on the menu this month called Parker butter rolls, and it's based off of like dinner rolls on a Thanksgiving table. And he was like, I was so resistant to trying anything except vanilla, but the scooper kind of talked me into it and just kind of was like, it's just really close, just get a little closer to it. He tasted it and it was just like, wow, I never would have thought, I like vanilla, therefore I should try Parker butter rolls. Like that was never an independent thought. And so it's sort of like we're equipping folks to kind of draw out what the guest, sort of like dancing around, right? But it's a lot of kind of what Keith was talking about. It's those communication skills, those social skills, so a lot of time is spent less on honestly the information and more on the greet someone with a warm smile, acknowledge them, say hello. We have this concept that we really drill into team members called full face attention. And that's when, you really know the feeling when you're in front of someone and that you have their full attention, that you're giving them your full focus, and that presence is really felt. So it's really like taking those moments and really, making that the standard of like that moment of full face connection, of human connection is the standard. That is the brand standard. That's what, we expect, or you should expect every time you go into a Salt and Straw. So it's practicing that. Yeah.
100%. I think it goes back to what Keith said around, you're giving them skills that they will carry with them for the rest of their lives. And of course, it starts with the Salt and Straw brand, but centering around human connection, storytelling, rather than, reciting a script. That's just, I think, good like sales skills in a way.
Yes.
They can take any other role. Again, I'm sorry. I'm going to move through these quickly. I had a feeling.
Let's keep going.
Fly through that. Our next section, or the next E, if you will, is empowerment. So how do you champion trust? Sorry, my bad on the typo. But how do you champion trust and responsibility so that team members feel empowered to make the right decision? Robert, I feel like you are an expert on this. So I'll hand it off to you to kick us off. We think about this a lot in terms of, as you grow your business, like you don't have oversight the way that you did. And we try to provide our customers reporting so that they know that people are performing and doing what they need to be doing. But at Ono Hawaiian Barbecue, let's just start with the basics. How do you make sure employees actually have like the right resources and tools to be effective first? Oh, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. For us, it really starts with open lines of communication. We want to create an environment where people are comfortable, for lack of a better term, feeling vulnerable. When somebody starts with a company, they're going to be nervous. It's a new experience. They're learning something new. So we like to set the tone that, hey, we've got open lines of communication. If something's not working, let us know. If you need something, let us know. One of the things that I like to do, I don't get to do it as often as I would like, but I like to just go out to the restaurants. I'll go into the restaurants and I'll learn with the employees. I'll show them that, hey, I'm here learning just like you are, and I'll ask them for their opinions and how they do things, because I want the learning to be a two-way street. That really creates a sense of empowerment for them, because they realize that, they have knowledge that they can share with their team members, with the company, that can help improve operations. That helps build that sense of trust.
Yes, for sure. I think even the education, as we were just discussing, building up their expertise, making them feel like experts in your product and your service, it lends to them feeling empowered to like, hey, you know what? I saw you rolled out this new menu item. We followed it, the SOP, but hey, like there are some things that just did not translate well in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing you want is for your team members to feel discouraged to not even share that in the process. So, everybody, I think everything in the world is asking for feedback. Every purchase that you make, every every survey, when you actually get that feedback, what's your process for like enacting it or making sure that team members feel like you've actually received it?
Well, the first thing is to clarify the feedback and make sure we truly understand what it is that's being given to us. It's easy to just listen at a very surface level and jump to a conclusion. I early on in my working career, I had the advantage of working at Disneyland. And one of the things they taught me there that stuck with me is, if somebody asks you what time is a 3:00 parade, they're not asking you what time the parade starts. They're asking you what time it gets to that location. So it's looking a little deeper into what the question is. And, I like to do that with the feedback. And once we understand what the feedback is, we'll sit down with the management team and figure out, okay, here's what we did. Here's what can we do better? How can we incorporate this feedback? Because part of it's understanding that we have a very diverse population and people learn in different ways.
Mhm.
Just because I like to learn by doing, somebody else might be more comfortable learning by reading. Um, it's part of one of the great things about having a diverse population is you get to learn from other people's experiences and you get to incorporate all the best aspects of it.
Absolutely. Keith, I want to pop a question over to you. When you said you have the average tenure of your managers, what, 4 years?
Yeah, and our two main markets, Arizona and Texas, we're at 4 years.
That's amazing. I mean, the trust and responsibility that's like accumulated over time, you want to make sure that that's always represented well in every market, not just like your home base. So I guess my question for you is like when you're building up like this team of managers, how do you create an environment along the way where they feel, comfortable to be vulnerable and open to sharing feedback in a way that they know it's actually going to be implemented or it's actually going to make their jobs in the future easier, and not just like apply like immediate relief to whatever the problem might be?
Yeah, I mean, how we build that trust and responsibility with them, relies a lot on our regional operator team. So a lot of the communications that they have is with that regional operator. And, we give them a lot of decision-making power within that and that partnership as well. For like a small example, we count inventory weekly and, we allow them to pick that time to count that inventory through a window, on Saturday to Sunday of what fits best for their schedule and their availability of their team. And I think it's just like one of those small examples that can help them fit a pretty big task into their work week and within their personal lives too. Other decision making power. We have this saying, or my COO Kyle has the same quote. I forget where he gets it from, but people support what they help create. So in that sense, with some other areas where they can create something that they can support. When we have big food campaign rollouts, I'm not saying that they create the food and they roll that out, but we give them the opportunity of how do you want to bring this to your team? Here's all the information, here's all the training, here's all the learning to get that done. You can decide what that looks like. Is that a meeting with every shop in that market, or is it just a meeting with your one shop? Or are you going to host, small food meetings with teams on specific days, and something that they partner with the regional on to get that done. Did that answer your question, or am I dancing
Yeah,
around
it
it?
does. It also kind of ties back to the first bit on engagement and making sure that you have this idea of inclusivity at every step. So even when it comes to like rollout of like a new menu item or it comes to like implementing a new policy, you're thinking of like who are the right people to have at the table to make sure that this is like it's the most successful it can be. And when you're raising up managers, you want them to feel like they have that decision making power and they can start thinking and strategizing so that it's more effective, not necessarily because it's something they need to execute on, but because it's something that they know will improve the lives of like maybe like the entire region or the market that they operate in.
Yeah, 100%. And some other ways that they feel empowered in the brand too. Something that Kyle, our COO, also does is he hosts what's called an all chopster meeting, where he allows all leaders within the brand. I think the last call we had over 100, you know, team leads to salary leaders on the call, where he'll update everybody on things that are happening within the brand, whether it's new shop openings or promotions. This team lead was promoted into an AGM salary position, and we celebrate that. But then also he opens up the line. He's like, "What questions do you have? Like, ask away." And not only does that happen, just over the phone, we're very active in the shops too, of getting out there and connecting with our salary leaders. What do you want more of? What's not working? What within our operations needs to change, from someone who's on the ground level every day. So once again, coming back to people support what they help create, we want to make sure they feel heard and, put it to action if it can be done.
Perfect segue. Truly. Awesome. Oh, Kathleen has a question. I love this new feature. How do you manage a call of that size, and how do you get everyone invited? Which is tactical, but super important.
Yeah, so it's a reoccurring call that Kyle has set with the brand, and we use Google Meet. Google Meets work very well for us, where team members don't have to be on a screen share. Google Meet provides a phone number and a PIN where they can just call in. And honestly, we've been using it for years, and I stand by Google Meet.
Thanks for your question, Kathleen. Awesome. All right. So on the note of evaluation, when I like to think of like, okay, you have your brand ambassador set up. Maybe it's your salaried managers, maybe it's your team leads, but you know who's like really strong. And they're kind of setting a precedent for what somebody would have to do to get to that level. So when you're measuring something as like ambiguous as like brand ambassadorship, how do you put that on paper? Like, how do you know your team members actually feel empowered? And maybe you have a survey, or maybe it's like one-on-ones with their manager. How do you measure that? And this is open to anyone, whoever wants to take it first.
I think, at least for us, it's surveys. Um, typically we'll expect a certain level of response. If we see a location that doesn't have a response, that tells me that people aren't as engaged there. So it'll drive us to dig in a little deeper and find out what's going on. And it's most of our employees have been fans of Ono. That's why they came to work for us. They like the food, fit in their community, so they're already brand ambassadors. We create that environment with them where they feel like they have skin in the game. We talk to them. We ask them for their opinions. We show them that learning is a continuous process by, having our leaders go out there and train side by side with them and ask, how they turn around and do something. I see Tabitha asked, do we use a 360-degree survey? Not officially, no. Informally, yes. It starts, with me. I'll ask my team, hey, what am I doing good? What am I doing bad? What can I do better? I also ask employees that call me directly. After we've gone through a situation and resolved something or not resolved something, I'll give it a little bit of time to breathe and go back to the employee and say, hey, I just wanted to follow up. I know we met about this. Was there something I could do better in that situation? Were you happy with the results? And part of it's understanding that not everybody is going to be happy 100% of the time. Like any Ohana or family, there's going to be disagreements, but as long as there's a mutual respect and a willingness to listen, that gets us 99% of the way there.
Thanks, Robert. Angela, I want to make sure you can pop in so you just started implementing a survey.
Yes. So I want to talk about that a little bit. So we piloted it this year. We realized we've over the last couple of years put a lot of energy into, kind of first time managers or early career managers. And so we have a lot of, kind of programs around that. And I want to touch on that in a second. But where we piloted the 360s was we started a senior leadership accelerator, or SLAY, as we call it, a program for kind of that senior director level. And we piloted a leadership cohort kind of experience over 6 to 8 weeks that included a 360 with their team. It also included some development, a book read, a sprint project, and some, offsites and things. And so that was really, really great. But I think what we learned from that is, obviously 360s are a pretty heavy lift when it comes to administrating and, giving them out and the time it takes for folks to respond to them. But it was worth it, and being able to then turn that pilot into phase 2, which is what we are currently doing, where our entire executive team did a 360, and now they're in their kind of like review process with the results. And so basically then our entire core like senior leadership group, expanding down to kind of director level, is now sort of bought into this idea of real radical feedback, radical honesty, things like that. And I think it has begun to really start to open lines of communication across boundaries that maybe, when you're in this high growth mode, everyone's just kind of like, go, but it gives us a chance to pause and kind of find where we're reconnecting and where those disconnects or connects are internally. The other piece of this that I wanted to talk about on the evaluation front is around performance reviews. So have the great fortune, I think, of also being a part of that process. And something that we started this year, we had kind of put in the works the last couple of years, but we shifted the model for performance reviews to be sort of 50% job related tasks and 50% our core competencies. And one of our core competencies is legendary hospitality. And so we were able to not only have our core values be like almost, core values which inform our core competencies, really positioned at the same level as not only is it your task, all the tasks of your job, but also how you show up, how you represent the brand, how you treat each other, those kinds of things. It really positioned the weight of it kind of equally, right? So it helps people kind of get that sort of mind shift, that it's their job to, be a good person, all that kind of stuff. The other, like to support that, I would say, I'm a huge fan of rubrics. I know that's a super nerd in me, but so we were able to put a ton of rubrics together and like drill down what are the observable behaviors that lead someone to believe that they're, displaying legendary hospitality or that they're displaying active, communication or things like that. And so did a bunch of training leading up to performance reviews to like, how do you use this rubric? How do you rate someone on things that are sort of intangible? And how do I center myself in that? And how, like, simultaneously as an employee, how do you advocate for yourself? How do you tell your own story of how you've, been showing up in a certain manner, so that there is that level of, ownership and buy-in too from team members? So I don't know, I think it's kind of like looking at the whole system and seeing like where are we holding folks' feet to the fire, and does it actually line up with what we want them to be doing, and how do we encourage, the best behaviors possible?
Absolutely. And before we move on to encouragement, Tabitha, it's a really great question around 360 surveys because, as Robert mentioned, and I love that you called this out, there is anxiety around performance reviews and being evaluated because it's like, hey, like I want to be an ambassador for this brand. I love my job, but I also want to advocate for myself in the process. And Angela, I think that's a great tip, is like having a rubric and training around that, around how do you measure these things that are sort of intangible or hard to quantify. How do you measure those, and also how do you make sure that your team members feel empowered to advocate for themselves and say, hey, I might not have done this to a T, but I have been showing up in other areas. And that level of advocacy, I think, is really important in restaurants because, the job description for any role in a restaurant cannot be reduced to bullet points. So teaching people to, think about other ways that they're showing up and be really cognizant and have that 360 view of like how they're operating on a day-to-day basis is really important. Cool. I know we have 6 minutes left, so I want to make sure we get to talk about encouragement because it is essential. Motivations, rewards, incentives. Keith, I'm going to pass it off to you because you mentioned your SEAT program already. But, money talks. And we want to, at the end of the day, this is a job and we're here to get paid. And we want to make sure that our team members constantly feel motivated to show up. How is that taken shape at Chop Shop?
Yeah, so our seat program is one of our big incentives to move up through those seats, and they can visibly see how they can do that on the career pathing, and that does come with more money. And I think getting paid more is a good incentive for the team. Like people want to make more money, and that raise also signifies a development piece within them. One that stands out for us is the back of the house. To find good cooks, quality cooks, or individuals that want to develop in the kitchen and actually learn can be really tough. And what we have is our back of house merit increase program, which incentivizes them. Hey, when you get hired, 3 months after you're hired, we'll give you a raise. And then 6 months after that, we'll give you another raise. And then 6 months after that, and we try and bring them up through this pay bracket scale of a continuous raise flow backed by the seat development. So if you're in the back of the house, you learn one station. And then to get to that, 3 month, what does your time and attendance look like? How have we stretched you to other stations, or how badly have you wanted that? And, it's up to the leadership in the shop to determine what their path looks like. But that merit increase program has been very successful for us.
That's a great example of having a personal incentive. I think when we look at encouragement, and Robert, Angela, feel free to hop in on this, we have the personal incentive, which is your wage and your proficiency in your role and the thing that you're being measured against and the paycheck that you take home. But there is this aspect of like, okay, what about the collective encouragement and building community? Something as simple as with having flexibility around the uniform, or getting to show up and dressed up for Halloween, or the pumpkin scavenger hunt. How do you make sure that you have, equal importance on both of these, knowing that, you want them to show up, but you want it to be for the right reasons? I think the dream always is like, you have a team member who says like, it's really nice that like, I obviously get paid, but I like actually showing up here and getting to be part of what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think that circles back to what we were talking about earlier of creating an emotional connection to the brand. And I think that really comes to what's in it for me in this, this brand. Are they going to grow me? Like, can I see what my development looks like? I think when I've had a team lead before who was a terrible delegator, very young, never done it before. And we coached that individual through what good delegation looks like, and creating a plan and creating goals with the team, and what does follow up look like? And then seeing that individual like have that aha moment of what delegation actually means and how they can have that tool in their belt forever, felt great on my end, but probably really felt good on that individual's end as well. And with that, comes a little pay increase, as they develop through that. So I think when they have those aha moments, though, that emotional feeling, that positive shift in their development, is that one of those big pieces that tend to keep people around.
Absolutely. I think we're at 2 minutes left, so I want to make sure that anybody in the audience, if you've been hanging on, thank you so much. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them now, forever hold your peace, or you can email them to me later. Yes, Haley. Thanks, Stephanie. I want to give Haley time to get her question in before we turn this down. Haley, also, if you want to join the call, you can request a live call-in. Save yourself like the keyboard. Do you? Cool. Can you clarify what you mean by BA setting? I think I know what you mean by employee-generated content. From a brand ambassador setting. Oh, okay. I think I get it here. So Haley, who works in social media marketing, which I salute you. Yes. Do you have Keith, Robert, Angela? Do you have employee-generated content from a brand ambassador setting? So I think Scavenger Hunt would be a good example of an event that you could capture media from. I think the idea we're getting to also is like internal marketing. So how do you keep this drumbeat going inside? Do you have there's a tool that came up on our last webinar called Beekeeper, where actually all leaders and managers are like incentivized to post to it monthly to kind of keep that internal marketing engine going. Yeah, and Haley, great question. How do you facilitate that and empowerment for the team members? I know we're at time, so if you have to hop off, thank you so much for joining. Keith, Robert, Angela, do you have an answer for Haley? If not, Haley, I can follow up with you. This came up on our last webinar, and I have a really great example of how this is being utilized. Not necessarily one of our customers, but it's another platform, Beekeeper, and how leaders are incentivized to post and also like keep it going, knowing that they are like the internal brand ambassadors for team members. But want to make sure that we get into things. So to round out the session, thank you so much for joining us. This is our second to last webinar of the year. For December, we are doing a 2-part AI and L&D for frontline teams workshop. Part 1 will be a live discussion facilitated by our CEO and co-founder. And then part 2 will actually be a live workshop. So get hands-on with top AI tools that people are using. Registration will go out in the recap of this webinar. You can also register by going to our website or signing up actually for our newsletter. So just go to opus.so and you'll get emails. I promise we won't blow up your inbox. Keith, Robert, Angela, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your time with us today. I'll catch you all on the flip side or see you in the store.
Cool. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Appreciate
Bye.
it. Bye.
Thank you.